Here's a question for all of us, Trumplicans and never Trump alike, to stop and consider. Does Hillary Clinton belong in jail, or should Hillary Clinton be criminally prosecuted? Because they're not one and the same thing. Let me remind you, give you a little refresher on the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, especially you Trumplicans. In all criminal prosecutions, pocket Constitution here. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his or her favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. The right to a jury trial. It's in the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is part of the United States Constitution. I mean, in a constitutional federal republic, where the rule of law is supposed to take precedence, not the rule of men, are people just thrown into jail without charges, without trial, just because they're of the wrong tribe? Oh, sure, the left is trying to do it to us, but it's no better if we try to do that to them. We're supposed to have principles. We're supposed to stand for the Constitution, not tribalistic revenge. And that is the point that Charles Krauthammer makes today in a syndicated column in the Washington Post. Donald Trump threatens to undo ingrained norms of political self-restraint. Trump's promise to lock her up subverts, constitutional norms. Now, the second joint press appearance, bloody, muddy, and raucous, was just enough to save Donald Trump's campaign from immediate extinction, but not enough to restore his chances of winning, when he never really did have a chance to win, barring an act of God, like Hillary Clinton having a massive stroke or just up and dropping dead. Now, that Trump crashed because of a sex talk tape is odd, though, as we discussed in the preceding video. It should have been a surprise to no one. His views on women have been on open display for years. And he had offered a dazzling array of other reasons for disqualification. Habitual mendacity, that's lying for those of you in Murrieta, California. Pathological narcissism, just like Barack Obama. Profound ignorance and an astonishing absence of basic human empathy. To which list Trump added in the second joint press appearance, and it had nothing to do with sex. It was his threat, if elected, to put Hillary Clinton in jail. And his supporters went, ah! That's what we've been wanting for years. Put Hillary in jail. But when we say that, what we really should mean is criminally prosecute Hillary Clinton. Because I can guarantee you, Hillary Clinton, even if she were criminally prosecuted to the full extent of the law, she would never end up in jail. I mean, let's think of it in terms of Emailgate. The very same charges were filed against David Petraeus, remember? The commanding general in Iraq during the surge, and the director of the CIA toward the end of Obama's first term. And then when Petraeus was of no more use to Obama and the Democrat machine, then all of a sudden these charges surfaced about him showing classified information to his mistress, or whatever the details of that was, or were. And he was criminally prosecuted. But did he serve a day? Did he serve a minute, a femtosecond in jail? No, he didn't. He paid a fine. I think he got some sort of probation, but he didn't go to prison. So Hillary Clinton is never going to go to jail. Does she belong there? Based on what we know, absolutely. But we don't just throw people in jail because we don't like them, because they're of the other side. Even Hillary Clinton would be entitled, under the United States Constitution, under the Bill of Rights, to a fair trial of her peers, of her jury, of her peers, with the right to self-defense and to confront her accusers and the like, because that's how it works in a constitutional federal republic. But that's not what Trump was saying, and that's not what Trumplicans are saying. I mean, let's clarify our choice of words. And I think it's very calculated that Donald Trump did not and is not doing that. Now, after appointing a special Dr. K puts it right here. After appointing a special prosecutor, of course, the niceties of constitutional governance and the constitutional justice system must be observed. First, a fair trial, then a proper hanging. The day after the debate, the second joint press appearance, at a rally in Pennsylvania, Trump responded to chants of "lock her up" with "lock her up is right." 2 days later, he told a rally in Lakeland, Florida, she has to go to jail. Well, she has to be prosecuted. And a fair trial would convict Hillary Clinton, but you know as well as I do, she's never actually going to go to jail, even if she may belong there. Now, such incendiary talk is an affront to elementary constitutional decency and a breach of the boundaries of American political discourse. Think about it in that larger context. Put aside the campaign, such as it is, but think about it in the big picture. In constitutional republics, the electoral process is a subtle and elaborate substitute for combat, the age-old way of settling struggles for power. But that sublimation works only if there is mutual agreement to accept both the legitimacy of the result, which Trump keeps undermining with charges that the very process is rigged, with which he doesn't really have any problem as long as it's rigged in his favor, and the boundaries of the contest. I've talked about this for a long time as well, about how our system, the constitutional republic that the founders gave us, bequeathed to us, only works if everybody voluntarily submits to and plays by the same rules. That's the rule of law. As soon as one side stops doing it, then it all starts falling apart. And now we see the advancing, if not advanced, stages of what Barack Obama started 8 years ago. Doesn't make it right. Two wrongs do not make a right. The prize for the winner is temporary ascension to limited, it's supposed to be limited, political power, which, of course, Barack Obama has never recognized those limits, and neither does Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. That's why they're both unfit. I mean, one of the spoils of victory is not the satisfaction of personal vendettas, or even contrived ones. I mean, Vladimir Putin, Hugo Chavez, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Benito Mussolini, a cavalcade of two-bit cadillos lock up their opponents, or worse. American leaders didn't used to. I mean, one doesn't even talk like this. It takes decades, centuries to develop ingrained norms of political restraint and self-control, but they can be undone in short order by a demagogue feeding a vengeful populism, which is just a euphemism for mob rule. And Trumplicans don't even have the biggest mob, which they've found out on several occasions over the course of this year, when they've clashed with far more numerous left-wing mobs. Now, this is not to say that the investigation into the Clinton emails was not itself compromised by politics. God, obviously it was, and I told you people that was going to be the case. If you think for one single solitary minute that any FBI that Barack Obama owned, that Barack Obama controlled, any FBI that was taking its orders from Barack Obama, if you thought that they were going to objectively investigate Emailgate, then you're an idiot. You're a moron. It was never going to happen. That's why I said from day one, Hillary Clinton's not going to be investigated. Hillary Clinton's not going to be prosecuted. Hillary Clinton's not going to be charged. Nothing. None of it. Forget it. It's never going to happen. She's above the law. She shouldn't be. She's not supposed to be, but she is. Everybody on the left is above the law. Barack Obama has seen to that. And now the right, well, not the actual right. The actual right is never Trump. But Trump supporters don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about the Constitution. They just want revenge. I mean, isn't that not the opposite extreme? Hillary Clinton clearly, multiple counts, breaks the law, doesn't get prosecuted. That is injustice. That is a mockery of justice. But just taking her and throwing her in jail without charges, without a trial, without anything, which is what Donald Trump is saying. So he said to her face in the debate. And she knew how it looked. That's why Hillary ended up becoming she was the sympathetic figure in that second joint press appearance. That's why, according to the CNN poll, by a margin of 54% to 37%, the public thought that Mrs. Clinton won that encounter. So now she's up 2-0. But it is injustice for Hillary not to be prosecuted at all for Emailgate. And it is injustice to just say, throw her in jail without even a trial or charges or any of the constitutional process niceties that we're supposed to adhere to, because we are not supposed to be a banana republic. We are not supposed to be an authoritarian dictatorship. We're supposed to be the United States of America. This is how it happens. This is how a country falls apart. This is how a country falls into civil war. This is how a country forsakes its constitutional heritage. And we've already done so. And now it's infected both sides. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, FBI Director James Comey's recommendation not to pursue charges was both troubling and puzzling and an outrage. An absolute outrage. And Barack Obama very improperly tilted the scales for interjecting while the investigation was still underway. That Mrs. Clinton's emails had not endangered national security. The hell they hadn't. But that's for a trial to explore, you see. I mean, how else can charges have legitimacy than with a trial? Right? I mean, a trial is as much for the benefit of the prosecution as it is for the defense. The defense, the accused gets to defend themselves, and the prosecutors have to make a legitimate, persuasive case of the accused guilt, or of the guilt of the accused. But the answer is not to start a new process whose outcome is preordained. That's Cardassian justice. You know, the verdict is announced, and then you backfill in order to. The trial is to determine how the accused, the defendant, is guilty. That's not how the system's supposed to work. Remember, innocent until proven guilty? Oh, these constitutional obstacles are just getting in the way of bringing Hillary Clinton to justice. Yeah, well, Constitution is supposed to be the Constitution. Besides, why are you Trumplicans so... Why do you want to skip that part? I think that Trump supporters of all people would be confident that a fully copacetic, constitutionally adhered to fair trial would convict Mrs. Clinton. I mean, unless you people have redefined justice along partisan tribalistic lines as revenge, because that's not justice. Justice is about the process more than the result. Well, the result's part of it, but a fair trial usually, not always, because nothing's perfect, no one's perfect, but usually will lead to a just result. And again, that's the system the founders gave us. You've got to have faith in that, otherwise you're no better than the other side. I mean, conservatives have relentlessly and correctly criticized the Obama regime for abusing its power and subordinating the civil administration, like the IRS, for example, or the EPA. Is the Republican response now to do the same? Just forget the Constitution, just revenge! All together now. Yes, it is! I mean, wasn't presidential overreach one of the major charges against Barack Obama by the anti-establishment GOP candidates? Wasn't the animating spirit of the entire Tea Party movement the restoration of constitutional limits and restraints? Well, that's what they wanted us to think. But obviously, the Tea Party was never about the restoration of constitutional limits and restraints. They just wanted the tyranny and the despotism to flow in the opposite direction. They didn't want justice. They don't want justice. They want revenge! And revenge is not justice. Kind of like Secretary of State Hugh Thunderbolt Ross in Captain America Civil War. And he said there are some people who would consider you, or who would call you, vigilantes. And this is a lot worse than that. I mean, in America, we didn't used to persecute political opponents, even if they deserved it. That's not how our system works. You know, I mean, you may be thinking, well, why are you defending Hillary Clinton? I'm not defending Hillary Clinton. I'm defending the United States Constitution. Because whatever you do to your enemy that goes outside of constitutional boundaries and delves into the realm of tyranny and despotism, you can guarantee that's going to be turned back against you. Revenge is a never-ending process. You get revenge on them, they get revenge on you, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. As opposed to letting the constitutional objective justice process work, and then whatever the end result is, everybody abides by it. That's the only thing standing between us and societal breakdown and chaos. And a constitutional republic of free men and women cannot function in those circumstances. Security will always trump liberty, and then where do you end up? You end up in a situation where, if you're lucky, you're a slave on the right side, on the winning side. And if you're not on the winning side, well, let you fill in the blanks on that. In America, we didn't used to persecute political opponents, which is why we retroactively honored Gerald Ford for his pardon of Richard Nixon, for which, at the time, Ford was widely reviled. People wanted to get Nixon. How dare he? Well, and then remember us in the context of Vietnam, so that was going on too. But it ultimately cost Ford the presidency. And Nixon might well have been convicted, but Ford understood that jailing a president for actions carried out in the context of his official duties would threaten the very civil nature of constitutional governance. He knew it would rip the country apart. That's why that very same Richard Nixon didn't challenge Al Gore-like the results of the 1960 election, which clearly, history establishes that Nixon was diddled. He was screwed out of the 1960 election. Nixon won Illinois, not JFK, but the Daily Machine in Chicago did some funny stuff, put their thumbs on the scale, and that put Kennedy over the top. And Nixon could have challenged it, but he didn't, because he knew why. It would rip the country apart. It would tear the country apart, and boy, given how the 1960s unfolded as it was, that chaos would have just started, what, 4 or 5 years earlier. Instead of half the decade being upheaval and almost revolution, it would have been the entire decade. There's such a thing as putting your principles and your country ahead of your party. And that's, historically speaking, that's been the right thing to do. And that's not what Trumplicans are doing. They're casting everything to the four winds in an orgy of anger and rage and emotion. And it's totally unfocused. And it's totally counterproductive. What makes Trump's promise to lock up Hillary Clinton all the more alarming. No, he promised to lock her up, not prosecute her. He didn't say that. He said lock her up. He didn't say file charges, put her on trial. That's not what he said. He said lock her up. That's skipping to the end. That's not justice. What makes it all the more alarming is that it's not an isolated incident. This is not the first time Trump has insinuated using the powers of the presidency against his political enemies. He's threatened Amazon's Jeff Bezos, owner of the Washington Post, for using the newspaper as a tool for political power against me and other people. We can't let him get away with it. With what? With what? With exercising free political speech? The core, or it's supposed to be, of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is part of the Constitution. Trump has gone after others with equal subtlety. I hear, he tweeted, the Ricketts family who own the Chicago Cubs are secretly spending dollars against me. They better be careful. They have a lot to hide. You want him to have the nuclear football, folks? What do you think, Trumplians? What do you think Trump would do with the nuclear codes? And would you be in favor of that? I mean, Trump has talked about, it's been nuclear doctrine for the United States, no first use. That's why there hasn't been a nuclear exchange in 70 years. Trump has said, no, throw the heck with that. I'm going to nuke ISIS. Oh, you're going to nuke Syria and Iraq and Iran. Is that pretty much? Did that sum it up pretty much? Pretty succinctly? Oh yeah, nothing bad could come from that, could it? Trump also promises to open up libel laws which he would not have the constitutional authority to do because the libel laws are at the state and local level. He wouldn't have the constitutional authority to do that, but you don't care. Trumplicans don't care about that at all. He'll just use his pen and his phone and his putter and do whatever we want. Oh, you mean like Barack Obama's been doing for the past 8 years? Oh, okay, just seeking to clarify here. So it's bad if Obama does it, but not if Trump does it. Is that it? He wants to make it easier to prosecute those who he claims attack him unfairly. First Amendment be damned, I guess. And here's a question. Has Trump ever conceded any attack on him to be fair? I don't think so. This election is not just about placing the nuclear codes in Trump's hands, although that's terrifying enough. It's also about handing him the instruments of civilian coercion, such as the IRS, the FBI, the FCC, the SEC, EPA. Think of what he could do to enforce the fairness he demands. In other words, rig the system in his favor. Imagine giving over the vast power of the modern state to a man who says in advance that he will punish his critics and jail his opponent. There's a word for all of this, cumulatively, under one umbrella. There's a word for that. Un-American.